Up till now, and he is postdoc researchers at the University of Turin, and he got his PhD in semiotics at the University of Bologna. He works on biosemiotics and ecosemiotics, and just mentioned that he's working for as in the editorial committee of biosemiotics for Springer and Linguistic Frontiers. And the title of his talk is Biosemiotics and Artificial Intelligence, Decoding the Language of Life.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. We are all tired, so I'm trying to go faster. So I will present some result of our project called San Francesco e l'intelligenza artificiale that we are developing at the University of Turin, coordinated by Massimo Leone and with my colleague Dr. Daria Archipova. So in this project, I will briefly offer you an overview about in 4 points. First of all, I will introduce very briefly the difference between human language and animal communication from a zoosemiotic perspective. And secondly, I will present the rise of AI translation project with a specific focus on Earth species project is my key studies for today. And for doing this, after the analysis of these focus, these key studies, I will present a brief biosemiotic critique, trying to go beyond the term of coding or the decoding understanding of the animal communication. And in the last, I will offer you a suggestion of my research about 2 terms, opacity and resonance, to understand the relationship between AI and animal communication. So really briefly, because we had all the day about this topic. So Thomas Sebeok, as Massimo already said, introduced the term zoosemiotics, and I mean, after the talking to Chomsky, he shift her he's thinking about if animal communication can be can be a language, a natural language. And he construct with Marcel Danesi this 3 modally system where we can find the animal communication is the broader field where we can find inside the human language as a very specific part of this broader animal communication. And this is the reason why Thomas Sebeok believed that human language was constructed by symbolic, recursive, and syntactically complex, and animal communication was iconic, indexical, but also embodied and species-specific or embedded in Umwelt. So in this regard, starting from the semiotic perspective, communication is not mere information transfer, but a situated interpretive process. So zoosemiotic is really important in this topic because study how animals communicate not only through sound, but also through gesture, mimicry, postures, and bodily expression, as we already said. So the important thing is that zoosemiotic understands semiosis as a situated act that operate within the animal's Umwelt and are shaped by ecological and social interaction. This is really important to understand the relationship between the AI. So skipping this part that we just talking about, zoosemiotic includes evolutionary processes such as ritualization and semiotic scaffolding through which functional behaviors become. So when we are trying to understand animal communication, we must understand the evolutionary typology of the signs they express and they exchange between interspecies communication. And zoosemiotic shift focus away from the mere information transmission, emphasizing instead how meaning is created through relational, affective, and contextual dimension of semiosis. And this is really important because if we understand these by evolution of semiosis through zoosemiotics and artificial intelligence, we can divide it in three typology. For example, semiotics obviously is the theoretical. In the theoretical core is not simply communication; is broader than that. Understood as the decoded transmission of signals from a sender to a receiver. But semiosis, and this is really important, is the process by which something takes on the value of a signs of an organism for an organism. So those semiotics deals not only with intentional messages between individuals, but also with cases in which an animal interprets an element of the environment or trace left by another living being without there being a recognizable sender. So, for example, but I don't have time. I wanted to focus on these ideological understanding how AI can translate animal communication, because as we will see, the critical point is therefore not whether animals communicate, but how AI intends to address the phenomenon of communication. So if you see some like Adzaraskin presentation in the web, Adzaraskin is the co-founder of Cheti project. He always show these images. This is a very interesting understanding of language, because all these projects like Cheti, like Dolphin Gemma by Google, or ISPA, for example, they share a common ground that uh, all the languages shared universal structures. So the premise of this project is that syntax is very and semantics is very like shared in a universal understanding of language. So I not criticize this like understanding of the language, but they reproduce this understanding of a universal like structure of language in animal communication. And this is the tricky question, because as you can see in this image, for this research, you can map the semantic relationship between words through AI. So this is the representation through AI, understanding how the words are connected through the share like meaning. No, so dog, it's can find some relationship between guardian, friends, man, and so on. And Adzaraskin, that is like a representation of this very new understanding project, every time show this map. So for him, human language can be represented by AI through a design mapping. Okay. And nowadays they are trying to do this with animal communication. And this is really tricky, because the common assumption is animal communication is structured like human language. No, signal, syntax plus referent. And meaning in this regard is discoverable via algorithmic decoding. So in all this project shared that this idea that universal translation is possible through pattern recognition. But is a massive amount of data enough? This remind me like Soren Brier book, Information is Not Enough, no, cyber semiotics for who doesn't know. Where, for example, you can see in this image the comparative size of data set used for training NLP models. They took all the signals of whales starting from the 80s in the web to today, and they put all together this data set for trying to map how the whales communicate. So, and this is really strange, because I analyze the text of their like publication and in their website, and they use sometimes translate and sometimes decode. And this is really another tricky question, because this assumes there is a code to the code inside the living. So the understanding of this project is within this living system, there is a code that we can decode with a non-human artifact. This is like the aim of this project. Like obviously a translation of a foreign language, for example. And this is really strange because, for example, whales don't speak in language, in natural language. They click, for example, they clicks are part of social, affective, and ecological life, and we must to understand it from a biosemiotic perspective, because animal semiosis is not only symbolic, is obviously symbolic too, as we saw today with the fantastic presentation of Jamin, but is also like affective, embodied, and relational. And this is the problem with the relationship between AI and the body embedded in ecological situation of the animal. So, and this is a very spoiler of my research, Ceti risk to flattening the complexity of whale communication into human categories, because we have to understand that there is like a common ground, animal communication, called zoosemiotics, and inside there is a very specific part called anthroposemiosis, that is a human language, and this is all. So meaning in nature is not decoded, it's lived, felt, and co-created. And this is very interesting because in my key studies that I will like show you today, Earth Species Project, the most cool project with a lot of money and so on. Uh, they show in the page in the yes, in the web page, the objectives, and you can say here decode animal communication across many species. They try to construct a dictionary, no, the old dream that we can construct the dictionary, dog human, horses human, cat human, and so on. But what it like that what we can say in, like, for example, in this image taken from their page, they are trying to construct a dictionary across the tree of life. This is the reason why my subtitle was about the translating and decoding the life itself. And this is really strange because obviously they try to transform perception of the human by amplifying it, and this is okay. I mean, we use tools for amplifying our senses. That's very peaceful. And they are trying to empower research with AI tools that uncover ecological patterns and vocal repertories in bioacoustic data. And with biosemiotic analysis of this corpus of text, we can say, we can like, I will like expose you like a critique, a little critique, and that I'm trying to develop in my research. For example, that for biosemiotics, semiosis is a situated body and relational signification that emerge from the Umwelt. So it's not possible to understand the meaning without in a disembodied decoding, no, process. And the other problem is that AI lacks Umwelt, intentionality, affective grounding. So the question about agency of the AI is really like tricky too, because we cannot say at all that AI have an Umwelt. So in this regard, for example, translation without word inhabitation becomes simulation. And this is what Massimo Leone was talking about before. So translation become a simulation where when it's not embedded in this relation, it's not like embedded in ecological situationship. So in contemporary zoosemiotics, the comparative perspective of the contemporary zoosemiotics, the embodiment of meaning has a central importance in this research. And I will explore the core biosemiotic concept for helping us to understanding how, for example, we can talk about animal communication in relation to AI translation or decoding process and so on. For example, three concepts, very easy, very like peaceful. The Umwelt theory, we already saw this concept thanks to Serenella that exposed for us today. The problem with the Umwelt, as I already said, is that AI system lacking embodiment cannot inhabit an Umwelt. This is really important to understand. And semiotic freedom, another term already explored by Serenella, the semiotic freedom has the capacity to resist computational formalization. We cannot like prescribe the life as it become. No? And this is really important because, for example, Kalevi Kuhl and Peter Torob propose this very beautiful concept, biotranslation. No? Biotranslation is the process by which signs are transmitted between different Umwelten or semiotic systems. Unlike linguistic translation, but coming from that, biotranslation operates within ecological and affective constraints. And the constraint of the environment is really meaningful to understand animal communication. Because, for example, when we like heard there is like ocean acidification. The acidification of the ocean changed the sign system of the animals. So we cannot understand the whale between them, how they vocalize. We have to understand like the ecology where they are living and express itself. So it requires interpretive compatibility, no? The overlapping Umwelten, not syntactic correspondence as AI is doing right now. So I want to like show you this concept that I'm taking from a lot of authors, but Massimo Leone was working too. Is opacity of the living system. It's really cool concept because while artificial intelligence, for example, operates under a paradigm of clarity, if you are going to if you discover like the website of Chetty, they are saying we are translating animals. Okay, we can talk with each other. No, it's not like this. So biological semiosis remain irreducibly opaque, as it always embedded within a specific species-specific umwelt. So this opacity is not epistemic flow. Okay, thank you. But the mark of semiotic freedom. So the freedom is to not be understood. Okay, the capacity of an organism to signify beyond deterministic rules. Okay, in ways that are obviously affective, situated, and plural. No, like the opera aperta by Umberto Eco. No, the meaning is always open and in connection with the observer. No. In contrast to the logic, the AI logic of translation, which seek stable equivalences, the biosemiotic approach embraces opacity as the very space where meaning unfolds as negotiation, resonance, and transformation. And this is my own perspective about the biosemiotic analysis of this case study. So translation is always a manipulation, as we well know from Lotman and so on. So, but AI, as we can see before, is not a neutral translator, but an actant. Okay, it filters, transforms, and generates output through processes that are inherently manipulative. No, we can talk about the bias between gender studies, for example, in AI communication and so on. But for example, every act of translation or codification implies a selection. Obviously, we like cut, no, of what counts as a meaningful for us. So in this regard, I want to show you little shift, for example, from this massive amount of data set to translate to a semiotic of listening. No, Massimo was talking about to understand in a very low budget the semiosis. No, and this is how a semiotic of listening. No, from the logic to transparency, where understanding is equated with decoding and full access, to a practice of attentiveness, which acknowledge the irreducible opacity of signs and the interpretative alterity of the other. No, to build the alterity of the other is a very ethical act to understand non-human communication. So, in this kind of talk, I want to reframe, obviously reforming the zoosemiotics. For example, shifting from text to act, and this is very important in biosemiotic, okay? Because animal vocalization should not be transcribed as a symbolic text, but understood as a situated gesture, no? And we can say that there is a contemporary inversion, no, where we can say Jane Goodall going to the forest to understand the gorilla society. Nowadays, there is an impersonality of translation of data set, and that's all. So it's like a very misunderstanding of how we can relate to the animal communication. And the challenge is not actually the amount of data, but the epistemic frame. So the scientific value is increasingly tied to measurable, codifiable output rather than an interpretative depth. So the anthropocentric transcription we already said, and this problem about grammatization versus listening, that is the dream of interspecies grammar misunderstanding animal semiosis, but we already saw. So, going to the conclusion, I will propose two kind of terms. It's my perspective, my proposal: opacity and resonance. So, opacity is like a term that we can use for meaning in living system, where we can understand the meaning as context bound and irreducible. Semiosis unfolds within an umwelt and resists a full translations. And resonance, in the other side, is the interpretation as affective and relational, not two kind of materials that operate as a homogenic relation and homogenic oscillation between them. No, not just the coding. Understanding emerge through attunement, not equivalence. And the problem of clarity and prediction of AI, we already say that the aim for transparency is ideological in animal communication. The biosemiotic view is really important because opacity and resonance are not barriers, but they are conditions for ethical and open-ended interpretation. And this is the conclusion of my results of my project within Massimo Leone project, that AI is transforming animal communication, and this is obvious, but risk to reducing semiosis to syntax and pattern recognition to flatten the complexity of animal communication. And those semiotics and biosemiotics offer a new model to understanding the relation between AI and animals. No, meaning is relational, context dependent, not merely informational. And we have going towards a new paradigm of interspecies listening, no, not translation, but understanding through situated and ecological engagement. So the future challenges of our project is integrate AI into field-based semiotic research, resist anthropocentric biases in modeling meaning, and foster dialogue across discipline and species. So to conclude, AI should amplify semiotic diversity, not override it. So the goal here is not to decode or to translate the language of the animals, but to attune to their words. Thank you for your listening. Thank you for the attention, the patience, and so on, for being in resonance with this presentation.
Thank you very much to you for
Thank
this
you.
fascinating research. I think you have opened a future of research with all that. And thank you very much for all your reflection. And I open the floor to the question.
Um, so I